Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining our monthly webinar. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, of course. This month, we're talking about the threat predictions from 2012 from our M86 security labs. And once again, I'm very proud to be able to present the information from the great work that our security labs folks do. My name is Bradley Anstis. I'm the Vice President of Technical Strategy at M86 Security and a regular speaker on these monthly webinars, as well as different security events over the world. So we've basically got 10 different predictions that we're going to be talking about throughout this presentation. As we go through, this webinar is actually being recorded, and we'll also make the slides available to you, as well as we'll hold at the end for any questions. If you want to put questions through the actual question panel as we're going through, we'll pause and take them if we can. Otherwise, we will take them at the end. Okay, diving straight into it then. The first prediction that we're making for 2012 is around targeted attacks. And 2011 has really been the year that targeted attacks are really starting to become mainstream now. We've seen a lot of different examples of target attacks, and not to pick on any of the companies showing here on the graphic, and that's probably as many as we could actually fit on, but there's many, many more. These targeted attacks are certainly starting to become quite widespread in 2011, and we expect the volume and the complexity to only increase in 2012. Now, they're actually launched by either hacking groups like LoveSec or Anonymous, or whatever offshoots, or official or unofficial offshoots, those sorts of organizations, or for actual cyber criminals. Well, on the hacking groups, it's normally for public embarrassment of the actual victim. Cyber criminals are kind of not so concerned around public embarrassment. They're more around financial gain over the actual victim, or IP theft from the actual victim to sell on, or to get to another organization. So two different reasons of why these attacks are actually launched. And we find out about them because of, for two reasons really. One is, the widening application of disclosure laws. So here in the US, for example, really strong disclosure laws when it comes to disclosing these sorts of activities. So that'll be one reason that we're seeing organizations talking about the attacks that have actually been targeted towards them. And the other one is around, an organization really having to confirm that, yes, this is our leaked data. And we saw a good example of that with, say, Sony, for example, who, had a lot of, personal user information from their PlayStation network uploaded to the internet, and they really had to come out and confirm that, yes, this is our data, and then, of course, you're also confirming that you had been hacked. So, real, two main reasons here. And I think these disclosure laws are actually pretty interesting. So they are certainly becoming widely used around the world, and I believe, coming to the UK shortly as well. So it'll be interesting to see, what sort of increased activity, if any, we get with the widening of those disclosure laws. The main issues here for a victim organization is the brand reputation damage, financial damage through, plummeting stock prices, etc. But it certainly has a pretty big impact on an organization. But I think, reputation and image, etc., are probably the biggest reasons and some of the biggest impacts on these types of attacks. There are actually two types of target attacks. One is a server-side attack, and the other is a client-side attack. So let's explain those and use a couple of examples. So Sonic, for example, was a good example of a server-side attack. This is where the external cyber criminals, hackers, whatever you want to call them, went after, a external-facing web application or website. In this case, it was the Sony PlayStation network. And they got in by being able to make use of vulnerabilities in old versions of Apache web server, for example. So the targeted attacks, or the server-side attacks that Sony were open to, or had targeted towards them, were certainly against the actual server infrastructure at Sony. So it's external-facing websites or web applications. On the other side, client-side attacks. A good example of this might be, RSA, for example. Not to pick on RSA at all. They did everything by the book. They were basically, obviously, they know a thing or two about security, and they're running all the best practices. But it just goes to show that the attackers, can still get through even the most robust defenses. But on the client-side attack, that's where they're going after a workstation. So in the case of Sony, for example, there was an email message sent to a select group of users inside the organization. Clearly, the attackers had worked out who the right group of users were to target. And the email message actually had a physical Excel spreadsheet attachment. And when you open the Excel spreadsheet attachment, it actually had an embedded Adobe Flash file that made use of a zero-day vulnerability. So a zero-day vulnerability being one that has not previously been known, and one that a application update from Adobe, for example, does not exist for yet. So that's what a zero-day vulnerability actually is. So this is where the client-side attacks, this is where they go after the workstations. They're getting a backdoor into the workstations, they install their malware on the workstations, whether it's bots or some sort of key logging Trojan or whatever it may be. The client-side attacks go after workstations, go after employees inside the organizations. Now it's important to understand those two different types of attacks, because the remediation and the defense against those attacks is different. For server-side attacks, that's where you need to be looking at technologies like web application firewalls, listening to organizations like the group that explains best practices around web application development, secure web application development. On the client side, this is where you need to be making sure that you're running the right mixture of reactive and proactive technologies to make sure that you're detecting and blocking that malware from coming into your organization. And certainly client side is, for example, where M86 security plays with our secure web gateway product. So there's a mixture of methods being used for these attacks. In the case of RSA, it was back to good old email, a physical attachment. Oak Ridge Labs was an email with an embedded URL link. So we're seeing all sorts of different types of attacks coming in, and it's pretty interesting to see the re-emergence of email as an attack vector. So for many of us who have been more concerned about securing our web gateway, it just goes to show that you just can't forget about email as well. And we need to look at how we can get those, the proactive technologies that we've been developing for the website. We need to work out how we can get them on the email side as well. And then finally, advanced persistent threats, or APTs. Certainly been a well-marketed term in the industry from security vendors just like M86, but an advanced persistent threat is a subset of a targeted attack. Advanced persistent threat. This is where they want to stay below the radar. They want to remain persistent, so they want to remain in the organization for a good period of time before they get disclosed. When they actually get in, they'll start installing other different types of malware to remain persistent. So even though if you find the initial infection, they've already got 2 or 3 plan Bs and plan Cs, for example. And the RSA and Lockheed Martin attack was a good example of that. Went after RSA, obviously, for some security codes, some seeds, etc., and then used that information to get into Lockheed Martin. So a good example there of advanced persistent threat, and certainly we see advanced persistent threats as a subset of targeted attacks. So targeted attacks, certainly in 2012, I think it's going to be obviously of a big concern to many organizations, but from a security researcher viewpoint, quite fascinating to see, the growing complexity and just how they evolve over a period of time. Social media is the next area, and social media has just become a utopia for cyber criminals. We see, when you look at the internet today, there's kind of like, 2 different types of attacks out there. There's the sort of, target attacks, which we just talked about, which are obviously highly targeted, highly successful against a particular victim or organization. And then there's kind of the mass attacks, the sort of attacks that are just out there trying to infect anyone they possibly can. And it's these mass attacks that are growingly using social media as a fantastic a vehicle to find the victims and infect the victims. And what it's really playing on is the victim's inherent trust in using these sorts of sites. So seeing lots of different types of attacks coming out. 2011, we've seen social media phishing email before, the emails that look like they came from a LinkedIn invitation or some sort of Facebook connection request, something like that. We've seen those before, but certainly 2007 saw a large growth in those. We saw many lengthy campaigns using social media phishing email as a way of initially getting that malware or getting the user to click on that link. But inside social media itself. We've seen new different types of attacks actually being used, and some of these are pretty interesting. Light jacking, for example. At the beginning of the year, we saw these light jacking scams. It's a variation of the click jacking term you might recognize, that were used to hijack user clicks on fake YouTube pages. Light jacking actually ran the full gamut here, mostly focusing on outrageous or interesting headlines, some of which involve celebrities and pop stars like Justin Bieber, etc. Then you've got photo tagging attacks, and this is an example. The graphic here is an example of a photo tagging scam, and this is where they tag hundreds of users and photos with a link to in the description text that pointed them to a rogue Facebook application, for example. And then once installed, these applications then tag the victim's friends in the same photo. Similar idea with comment jacking, where they're actually inserting those links into comments, and then it all really points back to these rogue applications on Facebook. And Facebook is really a victim of its own success. The attacks will always go where the actual users are. Facebook is the king right now, so that's why Facebook is being targeted so much. We've even seen, you would have seen the recent examples of all the inappropriate content being sent through Facebook. Another good example of self-cross-site scripting, which I believe is a way of getting infected this way, where users are actually encouraged to copy a link into their address bar and then execute that link. What you're basically doing there is performing a self-cross-site scripting attack against yourself. So often sensational videos are often the baits here. So sensational videos involving celebrities, or sensational videos showing the iPhone 5 or whatever the target might be. But along the way of getting to see this sensational video, you'll be asked to fill out surveys, which cybercriminals get paid for, by the way. Install Rogue AV, which they get paid for. So along the way, you're getting sucked into performing all this work that the actual attacker gets paid for by affiliate programs, for example. So social media will continue to be a utopia for cybercriminals, and I think one of the real big concerns that we need to be worried about is how with the growth of mobile platforms, and we'll get to mobile malware next, but certainly mobile platforms are increasingly being used to update social media. So we need to be very careful about how that's being used and keep our eyes out for any new attacks coming through that vector as well. As promised, mobile platform malware. So we certainly expect substantial growth in 2012. 2011 has really been the first year of growth, and thank you to Bullguard for their growth chart here. But 2011 has really been where the instances of mobile malware have really started to take off now. We've seen over 7,500 already this year, and the other major point was Android now overtakes Symbian as being the most targeted platform. And not wanting to get into a political debate about Android versus iOS, etc. There's a lot of great things about Android, but it is also very simple to get an application published, and it's a very open platform, and hence and a lot of users are using Android. It's a huge growth rate, and as I said before, the attackers will follow the users. So really, Android's a victim of its own success. So we've seen different types of malware on these platforms. So we've seen banking Trojans. This has been pretty interesting, where we've seen Android versions, for example, of SpyEye and Kappa and other types of banking Trojans. And this is where these Trojans, when you think about banking Trojans and you think about man in the browser type attacks that we've talked about in the past, banks are always trying to increase their security controls. So one of the things they actually did was starting to use SMS messaging to try and add another layer of security to the banking session. And what the banking Trojans are actually doing on these mobile platforms is they're actually interacting with your SMS messaging to intercept those SMS messages coming in from the bank, those validation messages, and they're getting around, quite effectively getting around the extra security control that the banks have actually brought in. Keyloggers and data stealers we've also seen being used in mobile platforms, as well as mobile bots. So botnet networks, used, we'll talk about them later on in this presentation, being used for sending spam and used for, denial of service attacks, etc., etc. We're now seeing mobile bots being used as well. So mobile phones actually becoming part of one of these bot networks for different users. So those are 3 different types of malware we've really seen growing in 2011, and we think that they're really the start of where it's going to grow from in 2012. So getting back to the sort of business issues around mobile platforms, there's a big difference between organization-supplied devices and bring your own device, or BYOD. In terms of an organization, and let's face it, that's what our primary concern is here is the security aspects from an organization's viewpoint. When the organization is supplying a device, then we're able to put a client on it, we're able to secure it, and the sort of technology in this area is still fairly immature, but it's getting a lot better. So you can certainly get a fairly good degree of control over the actual devices themselves. But in the case of allowing employees to bring their own devices to work, I mean, I bring my device to work and listen to Pandora, etc. during the day. An organization needs to ask itself, what is the device accessing? So when the device is actually on your organization's network, you have to ensure that you're delivering a safe working environment to your employees. You have to make sure that that device is not being used to access inappropriate content that other employees might see or is against your acceptable use policies for internet use. You need to be careful what data is actually being synced to the device. Are they syncing their email to it? How is that email being synced? Is it securely? Is the data actually protected on the device? Can we as an organization remotely destroy the information on that device? These are a lot of questions that need to be asked. And one thing that we're starting to see a lot more of is organizations actually specifically defining a policy for bring your own devices. And this is an area that you'll actually see more communication coming out of M86 because, in the latest releases of our web filter and our secure web gateway, we're actually specifically supporting bring your own devices and helping you enforce those policies. And as I said before, the security controls are still relatively immature in this area, and really the IT department need start defining those policies, as I just said, and start looking for technologies like mobile device management technologies and security technologies like the ones you'll get from M86, or security and web productivity controls to make sure that you're addressing this area. All right, third-party software exploits, and this is where we're diving into slightly more technical topics, but this is basically the idea of, the RSA attack was actually a perfect example of this. Remember the RSA attack we talked about before? That was an Excel file that was attached to an email message. Embedded inside the Excel file was a Adobe PDF, file that had a zero-day exploit. So the whole idea here of these third-party software exploits is embedding files inside other files, so using the initial file as a container for the actual exploited file. And this makes it a lot harder for security technologies to actually detect the infection because your security control has to make sure it's unpacking all of that content. And it's actually moderately simple to prevent security technologies from unpacking these types of technologies by protecting it as a password or putting multiple levels in here or making use of some sort of embedding technology that is not supported on the security control. So this is where a lot of the signature-based driven controls like AV without the heuristic type technology or firewalls, etc., really start falling down on today's security environment by not being able to impact these files and see exactly what's in them. So the most popular targets: Java, Flash Player, Adobe Reader. All these applications are widely used. They have a lot of users using these types of applications. And some of these applications have basically become an operating system in their own right. I mean, you start to see what you can actually do with an Adobe PDF file these days, for example. It's astonishing how much capability you can actually put into them, or Flash or Java. So, in reality, these files have become their own operating system. And what the cyber criminals are actually doing is taking advantage of the update window of, the time it takes for a application vendor to have a vulnerability known to them, and of course the attacker will just make use of that beforehand with a zero-day vulnerability, but once it's a known vulnerability, you're also taking advantage of the time it takes for the application vendor to publish the actual application update and get it out to all the users, and for you guys out in the field, guys and girls of course, out in the field, then how long it takes you to actually test those updates, make sure it's not going to break any existing Java applications, and get them out to all your desktops. So, the time it takes to actually go from step 1 to step 16, for example, is can be quite long, and the attackers are basically taking advantage of the update window, and you are vulnerable clearly to these exploits during that updating window. So those are third-party software exploits. Exploit kits themselves. Exploit kits we've talked about a lot in the past with these monthly webinars. The exploit kits are actually really the technology that that the cyber criminals use. So this is kind of like the application that a cyber criminal will actually go out and purchase to become a cyber criminal, for example. And we've looked at lots of different examples of these before. The current king of the hill, as it were, is Black Hole, and certainly this is the one that we've seen seems to be the most dominant exploit kit at the moment. And you can see from the screenshot here, very professional looking, UI. It's using Flex technologies and a lot of commercial code behind these exploit kits now, which are making them a lot more stable. In the early days, they used to use a lot more of their own code, and they were susceptible to cross-site scripting and those sorts of technologies, which enable security researchers to sort of dive in them and get to know them a lot more. But these days, certainly, they're a lot higher quality, making use of a lot more commercial libraries, for example, to make them a lot more higher quality code. And as you can see from the UIs, they're also looking a lot more like commercial software. So the other major phenomenon that's actually happening at the moment is the reuse of malware. Certainly we're seeing a great example here would be Zeus. For the last few years, Zeus has really functioned as one of the preferred types of malware being used by cyber criminals. And until May 2011, the Zeus source code was only sold to private groups, and older compiled versions of the tool were available to anyone. But then the source code of Zeus was actually leaked, and it's now publicly available on the web. And as this source code of this Trojan is now available, cybercrime groups are using it to generate their own mutations of the base malware. For example, a new version of Zeus, 2.3.2.0 is released in September 2011, and that month the cybercrime group also released a Zipmo, or Zeus in the middle, Zeus in the mobile, so Zeus running on a mobile platform, which was a Zeus plugin that monitors SMS messages. This is the banking Trojan on mobile platforms we talked about before. So you can see here that the cyber criminals, now that they're able to reuse a lot more of the malware, they make their own mutations, and they're getting a lot more difficult to actually detect, with different security technologies. So the cyber criminals are getting, a lot more effective in their attacks, and these exploit kits are a lot easier to install. They're also starting to move to the cloud, as we've talked about before as well. So certainly, it's easier than ever to get started with in cybercrime by using one of the exploit kits. So most of the attacks are used, they use iframe tags in the infected website to redirect to the actual exploit kit, and there's the exploit kit that queries the victim's browser, works out what the vulnerabilities might be, and then delivers its payload in the most effective way. So usually we witness several dominant exploit kits spread in the wild, but this year certainly the most notable of these has been Black Hole that we show a screenshot of here. However, we have noticed a significant increase in the number of new exploit kits that are rebuilt by anonymous cyber criminals who prefer not to use the known exploit kit bundles. And as part of this trend, we have observed progress in the toolkit's code quality. Generally, these toolkits are written in PHP, and most of them provide a sophisticated administration panel, as you can see here from the screenshot. Once upon a time, they suffered from cross-site scripting issues, SQL injection vulnerabilities, etc. But recently, as I said before, they've been using more commercial libraries, and they're a lot more stable and immune to these sorts of attacks. So certainly 2012, exploit kits getting a lot more professional in their activities. Compromised websites. Obviously, exploit kits can't be successful without compromised websites. So today, between 80 to 90% of all the infected websites out on the internet are actually legitimate websites. So there are websites that are being compromised by attackers, and here are just some examples of legitimate websites that have been compromised in the last 12 months. And really the problem here is, many organizations, they might have their commercial websites hosted in hosting providers and behind layers of web application firewalls and all that sort of good stuff, but they might also still be hosting some public web content. It might be forums or blogs or wikis or whatever it may be, out to their customer base. And all these different, websites, when they're being hosted by the organization, they're all coded to various different standards and are open to weak passwords and cross-site scripting attacks, SQL injection, etc. So it's relatively easy for a cyber criminal to come across one of these websites and then compromise it. And these attacks, by the way, the cyber criminals aren't manually doing this. They're also starting to use bot networks for more and more for these sorts of automated, looking for websites that might be compromised, and then even automatically infecting or compromising, FTP credentials or something like that from the actual website. So all this results in a never-ending supply of legitimate but infected websites. And these are really the crown jewel for the cyber criminals. Because when you've got a legitimate but infected website, it's a legitimate website, so it has a good reputation. So IP reputation is really, very limited when it comes to trying to work out, whether it should be, suspicious or not of a particular website. URL filtering is also very minimal in terms of the capability it can bring to play here, because a website like TechCrunch, for example, education, news type of website, pretty unusual for it to be in a malware category unless it's obviously discovered at the time. But certainly, these are legitimate websites that are compromised, absolute crown jewel for the actual attackers. So we'll certainly see mass hacking to get a lot worse, and I think any organization needs to go and review any external pointing resource, anything that might be open to a server-side attack like the ones we saw in the targeted attacks, but anything that could be compromised to host. They may not be actually after your data. They might just be after somewhere to actually host and help cloak their attacks. And the reputation damage obviously out of this is nearly as bad as a targeted attack. Botnet disruptions. So we've seen lots of, many botnet disruptions over the years, and we've seen some really good ones last year. And this activity is definitely welcome and necessary. But typically we see a fairly short-lived effect when it comes to taking down botnets. So botnets are basically vast armies of compromised machines around the globe, and these are really the cyber criminals' weapons of choice. And nothing suggests that this will change anytime soon. Certainly the vast majority of spam, for example, is being sent through bot networks, and here on the graphic you can see the top spam providers. You can see here that the top 3 are responsible for the majority of the spam. And this screenshot was actually from our labs website just last night. So whether it's spam, data stealing, denial of service, distributed denial of service attacks, or mass website attacks, botnets really provide the horsepower and the anonymity that the cyber criminals need to perpetrate their crime. In the last 12 months, we've seen a few widely publicized botnet takedowns. These efforts have definitely been welcome and necessary, but ultimately will not have a huge impact on cybercrime. It takes a lot of research, effort, resources, and time to disable botnets, let alone trying to pursue the botnet operators themselves. And there are thousands of botnets out there that are in a constant state of flux and renewal. Unless the operators are actually apprehended, which we have seen a couple of examples of recently, botnet takedowns tend to have a short-term effect only. The Cutwell and Lithic botnets are classic examples. Despite being disabled multiple times, they're still spamming out today, stronger than ever. Even if you disable a botnet, today it's easier than ever to get a botnet going again, thanks to these pay-per-install programs, which are services that install malware on already compromised machines for a fee. Pay-per-install is a commodity, an established part of the underground marketplace. Pay-per-install programs have networks of affiliates that compromise computers and sell them to the program. This means that it's easy to recover from a botnet takedown. Rebuild a few control servers, pay someone to distribute your malware out to a network of compromised computers, and away you go, you're back in business. So pay-per-install programs is one area that researchers should really should focus more on. And being able to disable these pay-per-install programs or another type of affiliate program, which we've also talked about before, it's going to be a lot harder for the botnet operators to get back in business. So moving on to spam volumes, obviously closely related to the botnet takedowns. Overall in 2011, spam volumes have been down by 50%, which has been a fantastic, result. And certainly, I'm sure everybody out there has really noticed the easing in spam volumes, and really it's brought a welcome respite to many. But we certainly believe that spam will rebound one of the most concerning things that we've seen in 2011 is really a rebound in malicious spam. And overall, the spam volumes are down by 50%, really because of, and mainly driven by the Spam Closure, which was an underground spamming network, and also Rustop, which was one of the most prolific spamming botnets, which was successfully taken down on the apprehension of the botnet operator himself. So some of the issues that we've seen in 2011 is really around malicious spam. And we've been very surprised to see that, in some instances, malicious spam is spiked up to 25% of all spam. And when you think about, the massive amounts, between 150 to 200 billion spam messages being sent every day, 25% of that being malicious spam, that's a really massive issue. And we've first of all seen malicious attachments, but then also embedded URLs. So blended threat attacks, for example, also having large spikes of activity through 2011. And the majority of the malware payload being delivered through malicious spam were actually Trojan downloaders, which of course once the actual downloader is on your machine, then it basically gives the attacker the backdoor to go through and then download and update this cocktail of malware depending on what they actually want your affected machine for. So certainly spam will rebound in 2012. We have had a welcome respite in terms of spam volume, which has been fantastic, but unfortunately we don't believe that's going to continue. And I think the big concern we're seeing here is malicious spam. General spam is obviously a massive annoyance and can be very inappropriate, but malicious spam, now we're talking about a possible malware infection, which is also extremely serious. So we need to keep a careful eye on those activities. All right, moving on to major sporting events, and I would give this prediction my award for the easiest prediction to make. Certainly, it doesn't take too many brains to come up with this one, and it was actually one of the ones that I came up with, unfortunately. But certainly, any major sporting event, we saw this with the FIFA World Cup in South Africa. Any major sporting event in 2012 sees the London Olympics, which is obviously going to be a great event. But certainly, we need to be on the lookout, and we need to be very suspicious about and vigilant about any scams around these sorts of events. When people are trying to book tickets or organize travel or buy merchandise or something like that, they're very excited. They're looking keen to come in. The suspicion levels are lower, and they're easy pickings, as it were, for the cyber criminals. So, we saw lots of different attacks and scams around the World Cup in South Africa, and we can use this knowledge to try and proactively do more with the London Olympics. I think the London Olympics organisers have got a fantastic opportunity to be proactive in this issue and start, producing, civic intelligence and guidelines and suggestions and tips, etc., for consumers directly on their website. Just highlighting to them the types of scams and issues and things that we've seen in the past and what we might see during the Olympics. And certainly going a step further, they could, for example, an idea they could do here is actually, have a helpline where, concerned consumers can call in with the name of the company or the website of the opera or something like that, and try and work out whether it's an official, company affiliated with the games or if it's not. That could also definitely help. So we see here, as I said, I think the organisers of the Olympics here in London really have a great opportunity to educate consumers in this area. And certainly I'm sure the security industry would love to help them pull that information together. We see a lot of phishing and typo squatting normally used in this area. Phishing, obviously, an email that's made to look like it's coming from a particular company. And typo squatting is a website that the actual URL is very similar. It will just play on some small spelling mistake, and it's also designed to look very similar to the legitimate website. So we see a lot of those types of attacks in this area. So really, for all of you, let's make sure we're vigilant and suspicious, and let's make sure that we're passing that message down to all our employees and end users as well. And for our part, then obviously, our security labs will be actively monitoring any scams and issues in the run-up to what I hope is a fantastic event. So the final prediction we've got for today is cloud services. This is another one that we're certainly in the running for the, the easiest prediction to make. As organizations, rush to the cloud and get all excited about going cloud computing, and there's a lot of great reasons why you go there, from attractive pricing and lower TCO. My favorite one is the elastic growth capability of the cloud, which certainly we've taken advantage of here at M86. But certainly, going to the cloud has a lot of advantages. I guess what we're saying here is, make sure you've got your eyes open. Make sure that you're taking the great advice from third-party organizations like the Cloud Security Alliance, is one that has a lot of fantastic resources in this area. Make sure that you're thinking about the actual information that you're sending up to the cloud. And what data have you got going to the cloud? What applications have you got going to the cloud? What could be the impact in your organization if others got access to that data? And in some ways, I mean, you can make an argument going back the other way that the cloud providers could actually offer better security for your data than what you can in your own environment. The cloud providers, it's in their interest to make sure that they have excellent security controls, and most of them, the vast majority, actually do. But then they're not the ones that are necessarily writing the applications or encrypting the data or controlling the access to your assets once they're in the cloud. And really our big concern in this area is, the cloud services themselves. Once you've got a grouping and you've got a collective, grouping of a number of organizations with sensitive data in a single cloud service, and that really becomes a very ripe plum for a cyber criminal trying to attack. They can get into the inner bowels of that cloud service. Then they could potentially get access to many organizations' data, not just a specific organization's data. So certainly I think they will continue to grow, which I think is a fantastic thing. Cloud computing is definitely a good thing for the industry. But I think we all need to just, temper our enthusiasm a little bit with thinking about the security controls and the issues that could be involved here. And that's what we're really trying to address, with this particular prediction. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar. As I said before, that we'll make a copy of the white paper available. For those that can't wait, it's already on our lab's website. So we'll make that available to you, as well as a recording of the webinar, as well as a copy of the slides. So that'll be coming to you in the next couple of days. So for those of you that are about to drop off, I'd like to thank you very much for taking a small part of your day and spending it with us at M86, and I look forward to speaking again soon. Manny will pause here and take any questions that we might have coming in.
Thank you, Bradley. So if anyone has any questions, please use your questions pane to submit them to me, and I will field them as they come in.
Looks like we've explained everything very well.
For those of you,
if you have any questions, please come in through the question panel.
Yeah, for those of you who are asking, the slides will be made available in about a day or two via an email, along with a link to view this recording and a copy of the 2002 threats predictions report. Again, that prediction, if you can't wait for the report, it is available on our Security Labs website, m86security.com, and click on the Security Labs link at the upper right corner. Okay, Bradley, looks like I'm getting a couple in. What is the current risk of, say, banking on an Android phone?
The current risk of banking on an Android phone. Well, I think, at the moment, right now, banking on an Android phone is less dangerous than banking on your PC. Certainly, man-in-the-browser type of attacks, which we've talked about before. You might remember the big Zeus one that we uncovered here at M86 mid last year. But certainly, banking on an Android device is safer than a PC, but you have to be careful about what you're doing. You certainly, the same advice applies with, the other, when you're doing internet banking on your PC. I mean, make sure that you're verifying account balances by either walking into your branch or getting a balance from an ATM on a regular basis. Just as I say, it's safer than a normal PC, but you still need to be slightly concerned about it. We see this is a big area, I think, of growth. A lot of users are increasingly using their mobile platforms for internet banking, and as the users adopt it, then the cybercriminals will go there too.
Excellent. Okay, now they're starting to come in a little bit more. Next one is, do you think ISPs should have more responsibility for filtering malicious sites and or traffic?
That old chestnut.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good question. My personal opinion, and this is my personal opinion, not the one of M86 security, before I get into trouble, but my personal opinion is yes. They certainly, and I think not only for incoming material, but also for outgoing material as well. So, botnets, for example, people's machines typically at home, turned on all the time, connected to the internet all the time, through an ISP, no matter who that ISP is. ISPs can definitely, today when most home users are actually using webmail, not like a POP3 email client or something like that, then, an ISP should be questioning the amounts of spam coming from a particular IP address and reaching out to that user to sort of work out, whether they might be infected or part of a bot network. Yes, I think there is a lot more they can do there. I see slow signs of progress in this area from the ISPs, but yeah, absolutely, there's definitely more they can do. Hey, I mean, we'd all love that clean feed. That's kind of like the nirvana that we're really after, isn't it? When it comes to the internet, it's a clean feed to make sure there's no malware coming in, and properly monitor to make sure there's no malware or spam going out.
Okay. Going back to mobile devices, with RIM, kind of on the usage becoming, market share going on the decline, how is the company going to stay secure in a mobile environment? And right now it seems that, solutions are kind of difficult to come by.
So I think this question is embedded in the fact that, when you look at the RIM solutions, these are probably the most enterprise-friendly mobile platform deployed, certainly with the most advanced deployment tools, etc., available. So I think that's where the question's coming from. So as the use of RIM declines and things like Android and iOS, etc., increases, then I think that I think you're definitely right to be concerned. Mobile device management technologies, M86 is not a vendor in that space, but there are a lot of really interesting technologies there at the moment. There's a lot of innovation happening, but the technologies are still fairly immature. For example, if you take iOS, it's just one example. Apple released this free tool. It's called the Enterprise Deployment Tool for iPhone. Fairly easy to find on the Apple website, and basically that free tool enables you to do things like locking down the use of Safari and locking down access to VPNs and things like that, installing certificates on devices. So some really good enterprise-friendly type capabilities. I would have to admit the tool itself is a little tricky to use, but when you look at mobile device management utilities that are out for iOS, and there's a bunch of them out in the marketplace, all they're actually doing is they can't actually provide much more functionality than what you can actually get through that Apple tool, but what they're actually doing is providing a nice interface and a lot easier to use, a lot friendlier interface, around the actual Apple tool itself, which certainly makes it a lot more usable. But at the moment, they're not exactly adding a massive amount of more security capabilities into the actual device. For example, you can't lock out access to get into the settings of an iOS device. This is an area that M86 has been researching quite deeply in the past, because we've been working on mobile platform clients for our products, and the right ways of actually enforcing that technology on a device, it's not easy. This is an area which organizations need to look at carefully. I think there's better management tools around the Android platform right now, although arguably that's probably the more dangerous malware platform that we have right now. But more open, it's also an advantage that there's more. You're able to do a lot more with it. So, I think that mobile device management, it's early days. I think organizations need to be very careful in this area. I think the first thing you need to do, instead of getting worried about what technology is or is not available, is start working with HR and getting policies and practices, etc., in place for both organizations organization supplied and bring your own device strategies, get them out to employees, and then start looking at seeing how you can enforce them. You won't be able to enforce everything, I can guarantee you that, but you will be able to enforce a lot of them, and certainly hopefully you're betting on or hoping that the users also play in the spirit of those policies.
Great. Looks like we have another one. Which measures can be adopted by a cloud consumer to lower increasing risks in use of the cloud?
Good question. First of all, the biggest piece of advice I'd give you is get to know the cloud security lines. I know I talk about them a fair bit, but they're a great organization. They have a lot of advice that's open, it's free, it's available on their websites. Think about doing your CCSK, your Certificate of Cloud Security Knowledge. I've done it. Really good experience, and certainly teaches you a lot. So get to know the resources where you can get good information from. The second step would be making sure that you fully understand the applications and the implications, as well as the advantages of moving your applications to the cloud. What data is in those applications, or databases? How critical is that information? Who needs to get access to it? How are you going to be able to encrypt it and protect it? And cloud computing can actually offer you some advantages in this area. A lot of the cloud providers do have inherent tools inside their technologies that can definitely help with encryption, and it saves you from building it yourself. But you really need to. Biggest piece of advice was get to know organizations like the Cloud Security Alliance, and make sure you're fully aware of the issues around whatever assets you're looking at moving to the cloud.
Great. Now it looks like we have time for one more. Going back to mobile phones, how secure are Windows phones?
How secure are Windows phones? Well, that's a very good question. Windows, I saw the new Windows Mobile release at the US Microsoft Partner Conference. Looked really nice, beautiful to use, and I think it'll be very interesting to see how well it's adopted in the marketplace. At the moment, Windows is not the dominant mobile platform operating system, which is why it's not being targeted as much by the attackers. I think the Windows Mobile, however, has got a good history. It's been around for a little while. It's fairly well known by the developers, as well as it's also got a lot of security technologies already available for it. I mean, there are security technologies available for Windows Mobile operating system way before Android ever existed. So certainly there's a more historical base of knowledge, which would lead me to say that I believe it's probably more secure than some of the operating systems around today. Although I think you really need to go back to the open versus closed development environment. Perfect example there is Android is an open environment, and iOS from Apple is a closed environment. And certainly from a security viewpoint, as frustrating as iOS is to develop for, from a user viewpoint, it is harder to get infected through iOS because it's more of a closed platform. However, we've seen multiple instances of application issues in iOS, especially with jailbroken devices, and even with a researcher publishing a malicious application to the App Store that got through all the actual checking. But at least there is checking, at least there is a gate there. I think what will be very interesting, we'll see how Microsoft fare with this new operating system. But at the moment, I would say it's inherently more secure because of the knowledge of the actual operating system. The other thing I would say on mobile platforms, I think another idea that's really starting to gain traction, which is good to see, is kind of like the more private, as it were, application stores and marketplaces. For example, the new Amazon Fire, the Kindle Fire, is locked to the Amazon App Store. The new Barnes & Noble Nook tablet is locked to the Barnes & Noble App Store. And as a developer, when you're uploading applications, it's very easy to get them into the Android marketplace. There are more hoops you need to jump through to get them into these other, the Amazon or the Barnes & Noble app stores, for example. So I think, that is one area that you can definitely look at in the hope that it would hopefully give you a little bit more protection. But I think you need to be asking, those organizations what scanning and what application review procedures, etc., they go through before something is actually published.
Great. Okay. Looks like we're up against the clock, Bradley. So thank you very much. To everyone else who didn't get a chance to answer your questions, we do apologize. Just submit your questions to us, and we will answer them as best as possible. Again, this presentation recording will be made available to you in the next couple days. It will be coming to you via email. And thank you, and be on the lookout for our next webinar coming in January. Thank you very much, Bradley. Thank you, audience.
No problem. Thank you, Manny, and thank you, everybody, for joining and sticking around for the questions. Take care now.
Have a great afternoon, everybody.